Retro Hangover is supported via Patreon by listeners like you. We'd especially like to thank patrons Lyle McCarnes, Ashton Ruby, Randall Quiggle, Tony G, Stud Still Smash the Milkman, Keith Gasper, Raging Demon, Miss Peachy, Mass Keaton, Dischimera, Ozzy Garcia, JC, Megan Caruso, Andrew Liguori, Lunchbox, aka the Disgruntled Gamer, Adam from The Good, the Bad, the Backlog, Rick Firestone, Dave Jackson, Jenny E, Retro Overdrive, Soha, Parallax Puddles, The Emperor, Storm Beagle, Matt, aka Stormageddon, B. Ross and Van Fernal from Super Garbage Day, Gary Heather, the Retro Vixen, Eric Guess, Nomad from the Retro Wildlands podcast, Ash Events, Alan Bingham, Mike the Ref from Backbreaker Gaming, Ryan, Player One, Low 5 Alex, Alt, Renner Dreaming, and Oh Me. Your continued engagement and generous donations are deeply appreciated. Welcome to The Flight, a consumable curation of champions and catastrophes that is considerate of your chronometer. Today we are talking about what is the best gimmicky games of all time, as recommended for the topic by our patron Alt. What games are gimmicky to us? What do we think are the best? Are there going to be any Wii U games? Well, spoiler, not for me. Ooh. I know. And also, I don't think either of us included Mr. Gimmick. Did you include Mr. Gimmick or Gimmick?
I did not, no.
Okay. Well, it is our top 5 most gimmicky games. It is myself, as you probably all know. If you don't, well, I am Chris Gopleen, and this is the Retro Hangover Podcast Flight, because I know we have some new people. I see the numbers. Thank you all for joining us. They have been quite good. Thank you. And as always, I am joined by the most gimmicky of dick dragons. He has a gimmicky dick. Shane Seltair.
The gimmick dragon.
Yes.
Not sure what the gimmick is exactly. I don't know. If faking my way to podcasting for 10 years and making people believe I know what the hell I'm talking about. That's my gimmick. There you go.
I think that's most podcasters.
Fake it till you make it. But the secret is podcasters never make it. So we just fake it forever.
That's our gimmick. My gimmick, I don't know if this has been taken before, Shane. I am going to smoke a lot of pot and talk about MMA fights.
I think that's a new angle. I haven't heard
theories.
Yeah, I haven't heard too many people trying that one. So I think you got an untapped market there.
Yeah. No competition.
Well,
that's my goal. All right.
I don't know if you want to try that out or not. I feel like that could be disastrous, but I'm going to let you do your thing. So why don't you start us off today? And as the title would imply, as you said, we are talking about the best. I feel like we should clarify that, not just the most gimmicky, but the best gimmicks in games. So why don't you start us off with your number 5 pick?
Number 5.
Yeah, I thank you for that qualifier, Shane, because I do think that favorite is the best word. However you want to term it. Yes. Games, 5 games with gimmicks that we like in order of significance. My number 5 is going to be Okami, and specifically Okami on the Wii, because it just takes the gimmick of the Celestial Brush and the Wiimote and just puts it into one delightful little package. You really know what you're doing with your controller there. It might not be for everybody. It might have some problems, but overall, I think Okami on the Wii is like the definitive way to play this game, as it was somewhat presented. I'm not going to say intended, but presented. It makes the most amount of sense to me that you're going to be using a Wiimote as a brush as opposed to an analog stick. And I just think that's really cool.
I know that the definitive editions, the official definitive editions, the HD versions look nicer. I understand that, but I don't think there's anything that can really beat having a brush on a screen and using that to attack your enemies the way that Okami does. So my number 5 is going to be Okami for the Nintendo Wii.
That's a good pick. I have to admit, I didn't even think of that one, and we talked about the damn game. So there you go.
Yes. It just because it dragged on for so long. So
That might be it. That's unfortunate.
might be it.
But speaking of dragging things, you do have to do that in my number 5 pick to a certain extent. That is part of the gimmick, and that is the Etrian Odyssey games. And the gimmick is that you are basically functioning as a cartographer while you are delving into first-person dungeons. So Etrian Odyssey pretty much exists, I think, almost or just exclusively because the DS is a thing. Having 2 screens kind of makes this possible. So the bottom screen is where you're mapping out the dungeon as you explore it on the top screen, and you use the stylus to draw on a square grid to map out the dungeon. And I gotta be honest, I friggin' love it. It sounds tedious, and I'm sure some people probably would absolutely hate it. I think it's a little divisive in that way. But to me, it really harkens to like an older, a bygone era when, you kind of had to do that. Well, with some like NES games, like the original Zelda or something like that, people would get graph paper and draw out, the levels as you explored. And it's kind of that same vibe, but with just like, modern sensibilities and quality of life and things like that. So it's actually super satisfying, especially if you're a sort of completionist like I tend to be sometimes, of exploring every little nook and cranny of a dungeon and drawing out that whole map and like marking it with like, icons for like, hey, this thing is here, or there was a locked door here, and blah, blah, blah. It's just, it's very satisfying. So that is my number 5, the Etrian Odyssey series.
Number 4.
All right, moving on to my number 4, and I debated putting this one higher, but I think I think you'll see why with the later ones. But my number 4 is Monster Rancher for the PlayStation 1. So if you do not know what Monster Rancher is, it used to actually be a semi-successful Pokemon competitor. It never really made it to the heights of Digimon or obviously Pokemon, but for a while it had a bit of a fan following. And one of the biggest reasons it did, and this, I don't know how long it went on, I think it's for most of the games, but I'm going to key on the first one because that's the one I played the most amount of, is that you got to raise a monster. You have to create a monster. And the way you do this is you take a CD, any CD. You back then when this game came out in the mid to late 90s, you take a music CD and you put it in your PlayStation. Like you can open up the disc, you open up the tray, take the game out, put in the music CD. The game reads the disc, and then that specific CD has a unique monster tied to it. And that is the monster that you train, raise, and fight Tamagotchi style. And then once that monster expires, or if you don't like that monster, you go get another music CD. And I think DVDs work too, even on the original PlayStation. They definitely do on the PlayStation 2. But that was such a cool gimmick, is that how many monsters do you have? However many music CDs you have. You can also use other video games. You can use games from other systems, and you can spin them up and make a monster. And every monster has different stats. Every monster has... like you could say like a monster is half one monster and half another monster, and they all have different colors and different attack types and different benefits and different everything. Like it took all that data and compiled it into making a stat and specific appearance and everything like that. And it was so cool. I played that game for like months, just going through every single one of my music CDs, my parents' music CDs, every single one of my disc-based games. I just had a blast with it, just creating monsters and seeing how far I could get them. on my way to being champion of something or other. I can't remember. I don't think I beat the game. I got too busy creating monsters and seeing what was on all my CDs. But yeah, number 4 is Monster Rancher. I love that game.
Nice. All right. Well, my number 4 is a more recent one. Well, I say recent. It actually qualifies for us to talk about it on the show now as of this year.
Yeah.
It's Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, specifically the Nemesis system. I stayed away from the sequel because I didn't hear great things, but man, Shadow of Mordor was a hell of a lot of fun. It was basically playing your Aragorn power fantasy. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And what really made it stand out is the Nemesis system that they built into the enemy AI that kind of works in the background. So rather than just fighting a bunch of, nameless copy pasted, orcs and goblins and what have you, you end up fighting certain ones that have names and they have very specific stats, and some of them, hence the name Nemesis system, will return again and again to keep fighting you and act quite literally as your nemesis, and they will evolve as time goes on. And certain ones will also basically be generated for you to find with things like they've learned the moves that you like to use a lot, and so they will counter those, and just like crazy shit like that. And some of them will like remember things that you did like in other like enemy camps earlier in the game or things like that, and they will call you out about it later. And it makes it feel so much more personal that these orcs are just like basically calling you out directly about things that you did and adapting to you as a player. It was a super, super cool system. And I mean, I think the game would have been pretty good without it. It would have been a pretty, decent action RPG set in, the Lord of the Rings universe. But I think this is what really, really set it apart. And it was a lot of fun.
That does sound like a lot of fun. I have it. Like so many games, I always say I have it.
But languishing on the backlog.
Yes, the eternal backlog. I'm never, ever going to be able to beat all these games. It's depressing.
Number 3.
Anyway, on to my number 3. And this one's going to be kind of like a punt. This is an easy pick. And I might get a bunch of groans because it's an obvious one. I'm going to combine 2 games for this too, and it's going to be Guitar Hero and Rock Band. Do I really need to say any more? Just the ability to play with plastic guitars and drums and microphones. I mean, the game is a gimmick in and of itself, and it was a video game, like almost national phenomenon. And how much fun it gave everybody, how much happiness it spread across the nation in the old times and the before times, before we all hated each other. It is a fantastic experience, and it makes you feel like you're actually playing a guitar, even though it's like nowhere near anything like that. But it makes you feel like it, and at least like the drums, I think, are actually closer to actually playing drums, because that's kind of hard to fake. But yeah, I mean, I don't even know why I have to go into so many descriptors. If you don't know what Guitar Hero and Rock Band is, ask your uncle, because I'm not going to say ask your parents. They're probably a little bit older. The cool uncle that's a little bit younger than your parents. I don't want to feel that old, Shane. Okay. So ask them about what Guitar Hero was about. Actually, you know what's sad? Now that I said that, shit. I remember playing Guitar Hero for the first time on my PlayStation 2, I think the year that my first son was born. I'd have to go back and see the year it was released. But that means he could technically ask me, and he's an adult now. So he could ask me what it was like to play guitar. God damn it.
Yeah, I was I played a ton of Guitar Hero in college. So there you go. So also I am glad that you included that because I did not, and I now that you've said it, I cannot believe that I didn't. And Lyle will probably call me out on this, probably in the Discord after this episode comes out, because him and I we played a lot of Guitar Hero back in the day. So
Well, I repped it right there.
yeah, there. Thank you.
One of us said it.
All right. Well, I feel like I have the opposite problem with this one as I do with some other ones where I had so many to pick from. But my number 3, going back a little bit into the early aughts, and that is Bullet Time from Max Payne.
Good pick.
Oh man, that is so much fun. I remember playing Max Payne when it came out, and you got to think about it, it's all about context, right? Social context, because this was the early 2000s, and this was like peak fucking like Matrix, like Equilibrium, Fight Clubby kind of era, right? And so like to have a game where you're basically doing this like gun kata fucking dodging to the side and everything slows to a crawl and you can just, blast dual wield pistols at like mobsters. Oh my God, is peak action movie video game type shit. And it is a ton of fun to play. The story is not fun. It is very depressing. It is a noir story through and through. It's good and I like it, but it's I wouldn't call it fun. But the gameplay itself, pretty good time.
Too bad, Max. Back to gun porn.
Yep, basically. Oh, your baby died. Anyway, let's leap and shoot the guns.
Boom, boom, boom. So cool.
Number 2.
All right. My number 2, I wanted to get an arcade game in here. I wanted to pick the right arcade game. There's a couple, I'll call these honorable mentions, that could be in here just as rightly as any other of the games that I've mentioned. So I thought of Dance Dance Revolution. I didn't know if that would necessarily be gimmicky. I mean, technically, yes, if Guitar Hero is, but I was like, is that really a gimmick or is that just the game? I don't know. I love Dance Dance Revolution. I'm just very bad at it. That's probably why it's not on this list. Up into a point. Like you get me past like a medium difficulty and I start to look like a clown. But then again, some people say everyone who plays Dance Dance Revolution looks like a clown, so I don't feel as bad. The next one was like Hang On. Because Hang On was like the game that like you sat down on a motorcycle and you had to move back and forth. It's like, that's a really cool one. It's like, you know what? There is one game in the vein of Hang On that actually like blew my mind. And I did play this once. I played it. I found this arcade machine one time and they had it gated off and you had to have like a line to get in there. And this was like well after this game came out. I did this in Sega World in London, in the Trocadero, which was in the middle of Piccadilly Circus. It doesn't exist anymore, but they had this machine. And what game am I talking about? Because you're like, get to the fucking point, Chris. And here it is. Afterburner.
Hell yeah.
There is a machine that you sit down in and it will roll around like a gyro.
Yep.
While you're shooting down shit in your airplane. I don't know what a cooler fucking gimmick is for an arcade machine that isn't just like overdone. This was in the 80s, people. Like, I understand when you start to get into the 90s, and I'm sure some other people have games that like are cooler when you sit. I mean, I don't think any car game is more fun than sitting around and like twirling around in a fucking F-14 fighter pilot as an F-14 fighter pilot. Afterburner it's fucking cool. It's fucking amazing. And when anybody's ever playing it, you're going to want to go over there and watch them play it. And then you're going to do it yourself. Even though you're going to die in like 30 seconds. It doesn't matter. It's like for what most men experience in sex. Don't say no. You only know in the last 30 seconds, but it's a great time. I am not projecting. Anyway, Shane.
That is a great pick. I am still amazed to this day that my little Podunk arcade in Maine had one of those. I was so fortunate.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, I do believe that brings me to my number 2. And I am going to go. I feel like I'm okay. Full disclosure, I am going into, obviously territory now. So I feel like my first 3 were a little bit deeper cuts. But this is just like, fucking clearly. My number 2 is the portal gun from Portal, because it's a fucking fantastic gimmick. Like, I don't, what else is there to say? I mean, it's the entire 2 games are based around this one thing, and it works fantastically well. Portal and probably to a greater extent, I think Portal 2 are just phenomenal puzzle games. And that's it. That's what I have to say. The portal gun is great.
Yeah, it is great. Great gimmick. I love Portal. Such a good game. We made an episode about that, by the way, if you want to go listen to it.
We did. It's true.
And I think my son beat it on stream. I think that's still on our YouTube channel. This was back 4 years ago. I mean, he was like really young then, and he beat Portal in front of everybody.
That's true.
Like
I forgot
10.
about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So good for him.
Number 1.
So I'm going to move on to my number 1, which is kind of a number 1. I think it's probably the most important gimmicky game of all time, because it just started an entire gimmick revolution. And it was actually a quality game itself. I think this is probably one of the most fun games of all time, and I think a lot of people sell it short until you start talking about it. And that game is Wii Sports. I know that you don't have to actually go through all the motions in order to do the things that this game asks you to do. No, you don't really need to swing the bat like a real baseball player. No, you don't really need to swing the tennis racket like a real tennis racket. You don't need to do all the motions that all the sports require you to do. But you want to know something? We all still did it anyway, because it brought another dimension of immersion into gaming for a fleeting moment that everyone loved. You loved it. Your parents loved it. Your grandparents catching syphilis in the retirement homes loved it. They all loved Wii Sports. And I mean, it sold like 100 million. Well, it sold probably 80 million Wiis. The other 20 were actually people who liked video games. But I will say that it's probably, the biggest system seller of all time. And it did capture the imagination of like everybody, no matter what your age, no matter what your gender was. It was incredible. It was such a moment in time. Like, I look back at those years. I'm like looking at Guitar Hero, and I'm looking at Wii Sports, and like just the innovativeness and the willingness to accept new things in gaming before they just got completely out of control. That was, what a time to be alive, man. Like, those are some special years. And Wii Sports is really like a definitive title. It was the definitive title of those special years. And that's what makes it an easy number 1 for me.
Well, Chris, you make a compelling argument. So much so that I have to just go ahead and agree with you, because my number 1 was also Wii Sports.
Woohoo! So
there you have it. I feel like this hammers home just how influential this really was. And I will say that I have been guilty of this as well. Some people being reductive about the Wii and stuff, and being like, oh yeah, it's the retirement home console, your grandma's bowling in the community center. But when you really think about it, that sort of like cross-sectional market penetration is insane for a console, a video game console, and the likes of which we never really saw before or after. And it's what propelled Nintendo to even greater heights, especially with, I feel like they were kind of middle of the road for a while there. But yeah, man, listen, as a professed hater of motion controls, and I am for the most part, because I hate that they got just sort of shoehorned into every fucking game, even when they didn't need it. And that is one of the many petty hills I'm willing to die on. But this really took advantage of it in just all the right ways. And you would expect it to, right? It was like the pack in, it was supposed to, showcase what this weird TV remote looking ass controller could actually do. And it did. I remember having a lot of fun playing. Wii Bowling was definitely my favorite out of all of them.
Yeah, I don't know how I forgot about that. It's so good.
Yeah. I played that one far more than any of the other games, but the other ones were great too. I mean, hell, you could get a decent cardio workout by just doing Wii boxing. So I mean, it's It of all the gimmicky gimmicks, I pretty safely say that I think that is the top of the pile.
As long as you don't catch syphilis.
It's comes with the territory, man.
I mean, they don't care.
I mean, honestly, would you? Are you like 80 years old playing Wii in the nursing home? Do you really care at that point?
Yeah, I'm gonna get that feel the burn from cardio, then feel the burn from I'm about to do to you later.
Ow! I'm gonna be burning on the top and the bottom.
By the way, I do want to check out these are games that we've played. So if you have some recommendations for some gimmicky games, let us know. I know like some obvious ones like Nintendo DS games aren't on here. Wii U games weren't on here, and those seem like the easy options. Like Vita had some weird shit going on with it too. So many different consoles, and I've heard like there's a really good game called Eyes Before Me that I've heard from friend of the show Matt, aka Stormageddon, mention. They recommended that, and I want to go check that one out as well. But these are the games that I have played. So if you have recommendations, head on over to our Discord, which is free, and let us know your top 5 gimmicky games. And maybe there'll be some recommendations, maybe some things that just escaped our mind. That, hey, I'm like, wow, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that was a great gimmick. So I hope to hear from you. And Shane, where can they find this stuff?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. So if you would like to check out that their Discord we've got, or any of our other stuff, the Patreon, merch store, socials, YouTube, Twitch, all the things. We got all the stuff. It is in one convenient place. All you got to do is go to our Linktree. So head on over to Linktree/RetroHangover. That's linktr.ee/RetroHangover. And you will find all the goodies right there for you to peruse at your leisure. And that's what I got, Chris. That's where they can go in the nicest way possible.
But nicest way possible. You're trying to tell them to go somewhere else?
No, that's why I was clarifying.
It almost sounds like you want to insult our listeners by telling them to go watch our streams on Sunday night at 9 p.m. on Twitch or YouTube and watch middle-aged men play games mediocrely.
I mean, that would be kind of insulting. That is true, yeah.
I don't even know. Is mediocrely a word?
You know what? We'll go with it. Like I've said before, if Shakespeare can do it, so can we.
We're making up words. I probably should have said with great mediocrity. Made it sound more important. But yeah, we stream there 9 p.m. Eastern time, Twitch and YouTube in the Linktree. Go check us out there.
All right. Well, I suppose with all of that now being said, until the next flight.
Play with your what gimmick does my joystick have? Joysticks.